Do you struggle to be a godly wife? Do you even know what that means? Like, do you have a clear understanding of what God is asking or what people mean when they say you should be a godly wife? Listen, I was married at the age of 24 years old. And when I got married, I was not a Christian. I was, as my grandmother would call me, a heathen. And that for me just meant like I had not committed my life to Christ. I grew up going to church, but I didn't have a strong foundation or relationship with Jesus. I jokingly say I married my husband and Jesus at the same year because right after getting married in June, I believe I submitted my life to Christ in July. I found out really early in the marriage that I needed God in order to do this well. So because I entered into marriage not a Christian and then now I am committing my life to Christ, I really went before God and I asked him, will you train me to be a Christian wife? And I needed that training because I grew up watching marriages where the women in my family, God bless them, they were wonderful women, but not always beautiful wives in their like in the way they projected out, right? So I have a family full of women. It's 10 sisters and 2 brothers is what my grandmother gave birth to. And then so I have all these aunties and my mom. And I watched the women in my family be very dominant, maybe because they had to be, but it just is what it is. But what I saw or didn't see was I didn't see women who submitted to their husbands. I didn't see women who valued what their husbands had to say about how the household was run. In fact, oftentimes what I saw was this contention between these wives who went to church and loved the Lord and seemingly worshiped their pastors, but didn't have that same loving and kindness towards their husbands because now their husbands weren't in the church as they were. And so now these two people aren't spending time together in the same way, and they didn't seem to like each other. That was my experience. Now, I'm not saying that was true. It was just the way I perceived it. So when I became a Christian young wife, I asked God, will you teach me? Will you teach me how to be a wife? Because I was concerned that my becoming a Christian would cause my husband to pull away from me or would cause me to pull away from him. And because that's what I saw. And so God began to train me. And one of the things he trained me in was how to cleave to my husband, leave my family and cleave to my husband. Just like Genesis tells the husband and the wife to cleave to one another. Like for the marriage, for the wife, for the husband, a man will leave his family and cleave to his wife. And so I have to cleave back. And so let me ask you something. Was that something that you struggle with? Did you struggle in your marriage, in the early parts of your marriage, with putting your husband before you put your family? Put a comment down if that was something that you maybe struggle with, even if not externally, internally, like inside, you wrestled with. Oh my God, like, do I put my husband first? Do I put my mom first? If my parents want something, but my husband isn't for it, who do I choose? Let me know in the comments if that is something that you had to face or deal with, or if it's something you're dealing with now. Because I don't think we talk about enough of how those little things show up in the marriage and causes issues in the marriage. So people will tell you to leave your family and cleave, but what does that practically look like? And so I remember earlier in our marriage when Andre and I was married and we had bought our first home, maybe we bought the second home, and we had the big family gathering and all my family was there. My family and my cousins kept coming to me asking me, can we do this in your house? Like, can we smoke cigarettes? Can we no smoking in my house? Can we drink? Can we? And I said, ask my husband. And I was always saying, ask Andre, ask Andre. And it was like, why you keep telling us to ask him? This is your house. I'm like, no, this is our house. And he's the man of the house. So you guys have to listen to him. And I was received with so much, almost animosity. Like, how dare Kenesha tell us to go to her husband? This is your house. Because in my family, that is how we would think. Like, it's the woman's house. You're my family. So it's what you say. No, it's our house. And Andre's my husband. He's the head of the house. So it's what he says. And so that was a thing. Another way that was showing up in my family is when we had children, Andre and I was married 4 years before we had our first child together. When I married him, he had a son. But now here's my child, like this son who is my mom's first grandbaby. And, the family, my grandmother, everybody like flocked around this little boy who was our first. And it took a lot for us to get him here. So everybody was all in. And so my family also wasn't used to seeing a husband be so involved in the decision making with children. And Andre is like a huge advocate for kids and daddy and all that. Like he's full on dad. He is, I got it. I'm changing the diaper. I am, I have a plan. There's a schedule. The baby has a good bed. Like Andre, he was on it from the time Bryson was born. And my family had a problem with that. They was like, he's too involved. He's doing too much. He has too much say. And I had to say, are y'all crazy? Like, this is his son. He has more say than me. And even as Bryson was getting older, my mother would say he's too hard on him. But here's the thing. I understood because one, I have to cleave to my husband. I don't know what it's like to be a boy. I don't know how to raise a son to be a man. So what appeared in harsh to me or my mom, I knew my husband loved his son. I knew that there was nothing more than I would want for my son to grow up to be than to be like his dad. Andre is an honorable man, not a perfect man. He's made mistakes, but he's integral. He's kind. Andre is like one of the kindest people I know. Um, and he's just like, if when he makes mistakes, he asks for forgiveness. He's learned that's who he was. That's what attracted me to him. How good he was to his son and his ex-wife. Like that's what attracted me to him. So I would want my son to have that kind of integrity and manliness, right? So why would I hinder my husband from raising him to be in that? But my mom, she raised me by herself. She wasn't used to having a man have so much say. And so I had to tell her, you don't get to say. So I had to learn, like I was all in on cleaving to my husband and not my mother who had taken care of me, provided me. She was a great mom. But again, I would say to my mother and sometimes to my aunties, you guys are amazing women, but not necessarily great wives. So you have to recognize the difference. Let me know in the comments if you grew up in a household where maybe you didn't see what marriage really looked like on a day-to-day instance. And so, did you have a hard time cleaving to your husband? Did it feel uncomfortable to put your husband first? And do you think that your husband's supposed to come before your children? I've had conversations with women where, for me, Andre comes before my children. And that sounds crazy to some women. But again, that's what God requires, right? The husband and wife, we come first, God first, the husband and wife, our marriage is second, and then everything else after that. That doesn't mean our children are neglected. That doesn't mean they go without. It means they know mom and dad are unity. They are going to stand together in whatever decisions that are made. And in fact, when my children was growing up and as they got older, 6, 7, 8, 9, they can make conscious choices and decisions. They would say, we're glad you pick us first. Like that you all put each other first. My son said, Mom, it makes me feel more safe that I know that you and dad have each other. And he jokingly said one day, he was like, here's the thing. If I die, y'all will miss me and I'll miss you all, but I'll be gone. But if y'all die, I don't have anybody. So I need y'all to be good so y'all can be here to take care of me. So children, I've learned, feel safer when the parents are in good standing. So yes, I put my husband before my children. And what does that look like? It just means that both my children know if it's if they need something or want something, they're going to get it, but daddy's going to be taken care of too. So that is just how that is. So the Bible tells us to cleave, and I've learned to do that to be a godly wife, and I encourage you to learn to do it too. The second thing God taught me in my training to become a wife is how to submit to him. Again, I grew up in a single parent household. I watched my mother do everything. She had to, but I didn't have to. But when I first got married, I thought I did. I had a whole lot to say about everything. I didn't make space for Andre. And God told me my house was out of order because every time my husband would make a decision about something, I would lay in the bed, contemplate it overnight, think I have a better idea, thought I was smarter than him, and then talk him out of the original decision. And then everything would go to pot. And then I'm apologizing. I'm sorry. I should have just listened to you. Not that he's always perfect, not that he's always right. But God challenged me. He says, the reason you're struggling to submit to your husband is because you haven't submitted to me. And I was like, so I wanted to be a woman who had lived a life that was surrendered to God. And now I still work very hard to live a life that's surrendered to God. So I had to learn to submit to God so that I can then submit to my husband. And what I absolutely know is the word of God says obedience is better than sacrifice. And so I was being obedient. And because out of my obedience, there's a promise connected to our obedience. Like God will do what he promised that he would do by taking care of us, providing for us when we obey him. So even when I wasn't sure about how Andre was going to handle a situation, or if I wasn't confident in him, I had to be confident in God. And what God showed me over and over again is because I was willing to submit, because I was willing to do it his way, then he made a way. So I encourage you that if you struggle with submission, and put that in the comments, like, is that an area that you really find yourself struggling with? Kenesha, how do I submit to God? What does that look like? How you don't understand. Like I can hear some of you all saying, you don't understand. You don't know my husband is. He doesn't know how to do this, this, and that. You married him. You married him. So marriage is a place to grow. And if you guys are young married, you're going to have to maybe go through some heartaches and some struggles while he's growing, because he's gone through some heartaches and struggles while you was growing. And if you're older and you're in that same situation, guess what? Marriage is for growing. It's for emotional maturing. It's where God will teach you how to truly be like Jesus, loving, forgiving, patient, kind, not hold grudges. And so that's a part of the journey. So I just encourage you to learn to submit to your husband. Listen to God, like um, learn to submit to him, and then allow him to take care of that for you. The third thing that I had to learn to do that really helped me, that I believe helped me on my journey of being a godly wife, was I had to learn how to use my words to build my house, meaning, the Bible says a wise woman builds her house, but a fool tears it down. And as a woman, particularly as an African American woman, one way we really are good at tearing a house down is with our words. We will say anything. I used to love getting the last word because I thought I was cute and clever with my words. However, I'm thankful that I have a father who did tell me, Kenesha, be careful what you say, because even if Andre forgives you, he will never forget it. So I had to learn how to use my words to build him up. The Bible tells us as wives, respect your husband. And so one of the greatest ways that we could disrespect our husband is using our words to call him all kinds of names, to tear him down, point out what he doesn't do well, to take jabs, sarcasm, stonewalling. All of those things are ways that we show disrespect to our husbands, and their highest need is respect, because God created them that way. So I encourage you, if you want to be a godly wife, learn to respect your husband, even if you don't think he deserves it. Because a lot of us say that. Like, put in the comments if you struggle with the idea, or did you grow up hearing that they have to earn your respect? And so for you, maybe you withhold respect because you think he hasn't earned it. Leave me a comment if that's a thing for you, or share with me in the comments reasons maybe you feel like you don't respect your husband. Because listen, I get it. Like, they're going to do what they're doing. And maybe your husband is not, in your heart and mind, worthy of respect right now. But here's the thing. And I heard a minister say this years ago, earlier in my marriage, a female minister. She said, God spoke to her and said, y'all are not going to stand before me as a couple. So when I die and leave this earth, God is not going to say, now, Kenesha, when I asked you to do that, what did Andre do? He's going to ask me, why do you do what I told you to do, daughter? And so I just encourage you, remember, obedience is better than sacrifice. Do all you can to align yourself, your ideas, your thoughts, your heart with who God is calling you to be as a wife. Remember that wife is a position. And listen, I am talking to women who are in healthy, loving marriages where maybe you all bump heads sometimes or you struggle that way. I am not talking to the wife who was in an abusive marriage, who's married to maybe someone who's narcissistic, who does not pour love onto her, who doesn't know how to be compassionate. I am not talking to that wife. That wife, do all you can to be safe. But I'm talking about the wife who maybe you just don't know that you don't have to be right. Maybe you just don't know that you don't have to fight every battle. Maybe you just don't know that his way may not be the way you do it, but his method can still get the same results. That's the wife I'm talking to, who's just in fight all the time because she thinks, or maybe she did, or maybe he doesn't do it the way her dad did it, or she didn't grow up seeing it that way. Learn to submit to God. Submit, cleave to your husband, put him first. Submit to God so that you can then submit to your husband. And then lastly, build him with your words, making sure that you honor him and do what God tells us when it comes to respecting our husbands. Listen, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. If you just totally disagree with what I just said, if this is a hard thing for you, if this is a struggle for you. But I want to say thank you for taking time to watch it. And I want to see your marriage thrive in 2025. My name is Kenesha Berry. I help marriages. I help people who have been married for a lot of years or maybe for 1 year and they're really struggling with communicating and connecting. That is what I do. My program is called Think Your Way to a Better Marriage. And I absolutely know all it takes to shift your marriage is your thinking. All right. Have a blessed one. Bye.